Hey neighbors, and welcome to American Culture. So yesterday we discussed what unforgiveness looks like in a person's life. Basically, it makes it very difficult for you to give love and even more difficult for you to actually receive love. Another thing that unforgiveness leads to is that you struggle quite a bit. Now, God put us all on this earth to suffer. It's what links us together, but the degree to which we struggle is on us because often the struggle is linked to our perception of having control over something. I'm going to give you an example, especially where this conversation comes from. So I was talking to somebody who they have issues with calling people, people that they should be calling, family, friends, loved ones, you name it. And the question is, why? You see, back in childhood, or young adulthood, or wherever in life, somebody in all likelihood impeded upon their intimate space without them wanting to be there. And so the lack of control of protecting themselves from being hurt intimately has led to an idea that I do need to control if I can, or how I'm going to be hurt intimately. And one of the fundamental ways that that's showing up for that particular person is that they don't call anybody. Now, a phone call says, hey, you're in my space. I care about you. What's going on? And so because they're trying to control all aspects of what has the ability to affect them intimately, they wonder if they should answer the phone, and they certainly don't call anybody because all of that indicates it indicates opening themselves up to an intimate relationship, and they're not trying to do that. You see, the reason why so many of us stay in these prolonged periods of struggle is because the struggle is where we get our power from. Like I said, in childhood, they couldn't say, no, you can't come into my intimate space. They couldn't put up a struggle or a fight. But in adulthood, they can. In adulthood, they can control things. In adulthood, they can say no. And so what that eventually does is that constant struggle leads to suffering from other people. People who want to hear from them, people who want to have a relationship with them. That suffering then turns into a battle, and there is where a lot of people stop, especially if they're linked to the Lord, because God says the battle belongs to Him. You see, our job as people are to find peace with the things we suffer through. We're supposed to go to God and seek out rest from Him so that we don't continue on this pattern of struggle. When we get rest from God, our need to control things evaporate. And so all of the things that you're doing to control stuff evaporates with it. Once you acknowledge, I am suffering, and this suffering is of the Lord. I need rest. Let me go to Him and figure out what is injured in me, what needs healing in me. You will lose the desire to constantly control. The struggle is linked to your control. Your control is linked to your perception of being the one in power. God is the one that is in power. It all needs to go back to Him. So before I induce before I induce struggle on myself, I say, God, why am I in this circumstance? What is it affecting? Help me to see it. I'm going to give you guys an example. I had a struggle when it came with smoking weed. All of it, of course, I didn't know it at the time, was linked to me growing up feeling like I didn't have any support. Having to pretty much do everything myself. I could not find rest. And so weed gave me the illusion of controlling my ability to have rest. And it wasn't until I started getting into church and getting into God and realizing, no, this isn't the way, and actually not allowing it to be the control or the power trip that it was. Because anybody who's gone through any type of addiction, you know how it is. I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that, and what about this? You really do think about ways that you can control it and have power over it. But it wasn't until I asked God, what's going on, that He revealed to me. I actually got to look into myself and say, it's linked to this former identity, this former hurt, this former suffering. I don't need to do that anymore. I'm not that woman. I've grown. I can find rest in the Lord. And I literally, you guys, I said a prayer. God asked me if I trusted Him. I said, yeah, I trust in you and the promise. And the next day I woke up and I didn't have the desire to smoke anymore. Don't get me wrong. I still had the urge to complete the habit, but the desire wasn't there. And neither was my will. Because again, I no longer needed the power or to control that. I needed rest. And once I found it in God, I was good. And so there are a lot of you out there that are struggling with a lot of things, from addictions to intimacy to self-confidence, you name it. The struggle has turned into a battle a battle based off of power and control that you don't even have. It is about surrendering, giving it over to God, and finding rest in Him. Everybody suffers, you guys. That's life. But you do not have to struggle to the point to where you're battling. All of that is linked to your idea that you now have power and control over something that hurts you when you didn't have power and control over it then. It's a protective mechanism. God gives protection. God gives rest. God gives peace. God gives all the things you are struggling to try to get. You have to surrender it all to Him and let Him work His miraculous ways. Have a blessed day, you guys.